All right. So today's topic is one of my favorite topics in psychology. It's the idea of negative bias, and it's connected to a lot of different things. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ron Schwenkler. I've been in the mental health field for 29 years. I have a couple master's degrees, one in counseling education, one in clinical psychology, and a doctorate in clinical psychology from the University of Denver. I specialize in trauma and trauma recovery, and I conceptualize trauma on a continuum where trauma is at one end, and that's usually what people focus on. Is I want to resolve the trauma, I want to reduce symptoms connected to trauma. But in my mind, the other end of that continuum is performance, right? Because what does trauma keep us from? It keeps us from performing the way that we want to perform, and that's a fancy way of living the way that we want to live. But we're all performing in something, whether that's an intimate relationship, our jobs, training dogs, kind of. But we're all trying to do something in our lives, and the things that get in our way, the blocks, the most significant blocks are from trauma. Okay. The second most significant field, I think, is our childhood experiences. Now, trauma's in our childhood experiences, that's a poor combination. And why do I say trauma over childhood experiences? Well, because I've seen it too many times. I've seen people have wonderful childhood experiences, and then something awful happens, and their life changes, right? And so certainly our attachment experience from our childhood experience builds certain resiliency factors that kind of buffer against trauma. But when certain things happen, especially things that have to do with death, life changes, okay? So that's what I work with. My whole practice is focused on trauma. Interestingly enough, the American Psychological Association and the American Counseling Association, in order to be an accredited program with them, they don't mandate trauma courses, which I think is fascinating, right? Trauma is the highest comorbidity outside addiction with every mental health thing, and it's an elective, right? So that's my soapbox. I'm being very biased right now. I want you to know that people that graduate with doctorate degrees and master's degrees and say that they're trauma experts because they took an EMDR class, that doesn't cut it, okay? EMDR, brain spotting, somatic experiencing, comprehensive resource model, these are techniques, and some of them, like comprehensive resource model and somatic experiencing, have awesome theories attached to it, and they are sound, right? But just because someone took a 4-day training, or maybe they did that twice, it does not make them a trauma expert, okay? To be a trauma expert, you got to work for it. You got to apply it to every class that you take, and that's what I tried to do. And I don't even call myself an expert. I'm a specialist. I think that name is given from other people to people. I just focus everything on trauma that I can and keep learning about it. Negative bias is a huge part of trauma, okay? Negative bias is also highly connected, as we talked about, PTSD, but also depression, anxiety, OCD, okay? So first I'm going to give a very broad concept or conceptualization about what negative bias is. Negative bias is the ability to weigh heavier negative stimuli more than positive stimuli. It's exactly what it says, okay? Now, not only is it weighed heavier, so our focus and gaze and orientation will move quicker to negative stimuli, but we also, the brain and the mind, two different things, have a tendency to spend longer time on negative stimuli, right? So those two things, our ability to orient towards it and the time that we spend dwelling on it is the negative bias. There's about 20 different psychological biases, and I want every single person to Google what are all the psychological biases. And I want you to read each one, write it down, and then write the definition as if you're in high school learning new vocabulary, okay? people say they're honest. I think everyone in this room, without knowing you all, I think you're good people. You got to be good people if you're here. And I think good people typically think that they're honest. But just because we and our character is honest, it does not mean our mind is honest. We have biases, and we have a lot of them. So I tell people the eyes are set up to see everything it wants to see. You'll see what you want, right? And that's I think one of the arts of psychotherapy is to be able to help people see the biases and start seeing life more as it really is, which lends itself to Buddhism very cleanly, okay? Again, more on that later. Negative bias. There's two, so all of the psychological biases are, like it said, psychological. There's one that's biological. That's negative bias. Right, so human beings, the two main biological mandates that human beings have, that I'm most interested, is we are biologically mandated to connect, and we are biologically mandated to see bad things more than good things. Right? And we're going to be talking about that, the second one, negative bias, today. But on the first, we are biologically wired to connect. This actually kind of sets up why trauma is so traumatizing, okay? When we are born, and this is mammals, right? Every mammal on the planet, they need raising, they need attachment, they need connection. So when we are born, we are mandated biologically to connect to our caregivers. Even if our caregivers suck, we still have to connect with them. And that sets up a lot of problems because we're biologically mandated to a parent or connect to a parent that isn't good, right? So you can imagine like what a 1-year-old would think. 1-year-olds don't think, they just are, okay? So they're sitting there, they're trying to connect to this parent that's neglecting them, yelling at them, right? That would be horrifying if they actually could think. It makes no sense to attach and connect to someone who's abusive or neglectful. None. So what does the young person do as they keep growing older? They make the problem about themselves instead of the caregiver. This is called the locus of control shift, right? So if my parent is calling me an idiot, and that's all I get, that's what I hear. There's some good things. I get fed, I get watered like a good farm animal, but I'm basically taken care of, but I'm always an idiot, right? Then at some point, when I still have to connect to them, which doesn't make any sense because this person is being mean to me, I'm going to say, wait, they're not the problem. They're right. I am the idiot. I'm the problem. That completely solves the need to bind, right? Because if I'm the problem, then I can still approach them with some sensibility because they're not the problem. They're not the asshole. I'm the idiot, okay? That's the locus of control shift. That's the biological mandate to connect. Children will connect to the most awful parents, not because they want to, but because they have to. We have to. Okay. Good connection. I love it. As a behaviorist and a trauma psychologist. Sorry, Sabina, come over here. Come on. I look at everything as a survival mechanism, right? So obviously, fight, flight, freeze is survival mechanism. But love is also a survival mechanism. I know it takes all the romance out of it. But it's true. People that have loving relationships for longer term, are more successful, live longer, get sick less. Okay? Mammals that are raised from rats to bunnies to everything, when they get more contact from their moms or even from mammals that are outside of their species, even prey animals that get more attention from predator animals still raise or develop strength in their biological resiliency. I mean, that's a trip. That's how important connection and attachment is. Okay. So, first biological mandate, to attach and connect. to our caregivers. The second one is negative bias. We are biologically mandated to pay attention to bad things more than good things. Now, what we're going to be talking about is several different reasons from an evolutionary perspective why that is, but also from a sensibility. So let's go back many, many years, 1,000 years ago. The question is this: why is it advantageous for people, why is it advantageous for a mind and a brain to pay more attention to bad things than good things? Okay, let's say we're hunting, and we're hunting deer, elk, moose, we're hunting something. It wasn't like there were seasons back then. You could just go for what you could get. But then we're up in the mountains and we get attacked by a grizzly bear, and we happen to survive. Okay, so we roll down the mountain, and our tribe puts us back together. And, you know, it's interesting. There didn't seem to be as much PTSD back then, right? When we roll down the mountain, our tribe puts us back together. Now, all of a sudden, what happened to us because we survived a grizzly bear attack? Well, we got grizzly medicine. There was stories told about that. Maybe there was drumming and singing. It was a whole community thing that we survived the grizzly. Okay, so that's that. What does that mean? That trauma isn't as traumatic if it's well organized. That's what that means. Okay, especially from a cultural perspective. So we heal up, and then it's time to go hunting again, whatever, seasons later. And we find ourselves going up the mountain. Again, it's more advantageous to pay attention to bad stimuli than good stimuli. We're going up the mountain, and all of a sudden the hair on the back of our neck stands up. No reason. All of a sudden we have the chills. Okay? And now all the memories start coming back to us. And not the memories of the attack. Remember, the nervous system has one job, and that's survival. The nervous system does not care what your mind thinks. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about your political orientation. It doesn't care about your religion. The nervous system doesn't care about anything. It cares about survival. Right? So we're walking up that mountain, and all of a sudden, we get the chills. And all of a sudden, we start remembering all these little things. Right? Like the squirrel that wasn't chirping is chirping. The bird that was chirping is not chirping. And then we smell piss in the air because grizzly bears smell like urine really bad. And now all of a sudden, nothing else matters except either getting ready for a fight, flight, freeze, right? So we're either going to post up to get the bear, or we're just going to walk down the mountain. Right? It's really eloquently stated by another trauma psychologist that it is way more advantageous to pay attention to the tiger or the bear than the pretty reflection of a sunset on the water. Right? So we have to pay attention to all that bad stuff. Okay? And so that's been banging, that's been keeping people alive for a really long time, since people started being people. Right? When we were hunting or when we were walking and we heard a twig break, now most people in the woods, when they hear a twig break, they're like, totally oblivious. Then every twig meant something, right? So we orient towards it. We make sure that's the negative bias, okay? So any thoughts on any of that? Please talk, please ask questions. Or don't ask questions, just give me your thoughts. So, it's hypothesized that people that had stronger negative biases lasted longer and survived. Why?
Survival. I mean, obviously we don't have we don't have to worry about that now as much, so we're going to get into that next, I guess.
Yeah, but we still have it. Now every car is a grizzly bear instead of the occasional grizzly bear. But, right, so if the people with stronger negative bias, they were more prepared, they were quicker, they oriented faster with more accuracy. So who gets to pass on their genes? Those guys and girls, right? So there is absolutely an evolutionary component to this. The studies on this are so cool, right? How early in life does negative bias start showing up? Any guesses?
Infancy.
Yeah, what age of infancy?
Immediately.
3 months. That's pretty immediate, right? 3 to 12 months, right? Some studies have seen it as early as 3 months. A lot of studies have seen it as in the latter part of that first year.
Does it depend on the parent, what they're teaching you at that point?
Doesn't seem like it, because infants don't know anything but, well, they're very good behaviorists, right? So if I scream, I'm either hungry, something's wrong, or I got to be changed, right? So it doesn't seem that they can discern or differentiate between stimuli. They can just pick it up, right?
But I mean, if the parent's saying, "Oh, don't touch that because it's hot. Don't do that," do you pick it up faster, or you start thinking, "All right, everything's bad." The parents telling you, "Don't do that. Don't do that."
That might make a kid more neurotic and more
Right.
lean more towards a stronger negative bias,
Right.
right?
They're like a helicopter parent or something. You know, it's like everything's dangerous. So.
Exactly, right? And so instead of a child learning by their own faculty and agency, right? Like you stick something in a socket, it's gonna burn, right? It just happened to my kid the other day. He was holding a plug, and I was like, well, that doesn't look good. And he's holding the actual metal part, and he sticks it in the wall, and it's not gonna kill him. But he goes, ah! You think he's ever gonna do that again?
Probably
No, but I wasn't riding his back. I let him just figure it out, right? That helps kids put connections together, right? Cause and effect, right? But when kids have helicopter parents, it's like they're just getting nagged, right? And they never really learn firsthand, right? Because they're always kind of being overly watched, which totally kills the adventurous spirit, by the way. Okay. So, we orient more readily towards negativity, we dwell on it longer. There is this sense in social psychology experiences, there's an observation, not a sense, that people have a tendency to look at negative pictures longer than positive pictures, right? It's like there's this thing that is somewhat fascinating about negativity, and that's where we start getting psychological with it, okay?
They're kind of like that show Cops, where people just get sucked into that and they just want to see, shows like that.
Well, I wish it was just about cops, but it seems like that's our entire news platform now, right? Is that it's just a lot of bad things. And it's really interesting with people that try to set up news stations that are neutral to positive, like showing the good parts of humanity. Do they last? Not very long. And if they do, they certainly don't get the ratings that Cops and CNN and Fox News and all the things get, right? And we're going to talk about, what this means as far as the next steps. But I do want to stir the pot. Like, I'm hoping that people are having a sense of like, ew. Right? Like, this is humanity. It's like, yeah, it kind of is. Okay. There are gender components, which I thought was interesting, that I feel kind of risky putting this on. We're not going to put this on social media because I don't like fighting like that. I'll fight in other ways, but not like that. So, who has more negative bias, it seems? Male or female? Female. Do you know why?
protection, like if you're young and like because they're nurturers and they want to protect their children.
It could be. There's also this effect that women have more of a reaction to negative, explicit pictures, right? So there's literally more of a physiological reactions for women when they see bad things, okay? Lower in men, why? Well, a lower negative bias means what as far as risk-taking behavior? More willing to take risks. That was very important during hunter and gatherer time, which was most of the history of the world. Right? We are a blip. Modern society is a blip in the history of the world. Okay. So it allowed men to take more of those risks. It allowed women to pay more attention, maybe to the tribe, to the people, to the family. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it different amongst different cultures?
Yeah.
Is it what?
Different amongst different cultures. Yeah. Very interesting. I did not get into that, but I do have some stories about that. So, my wife used to be a professional dancer and drummer. So she taught African drumming. Okay. I've been working with people for 29 years. The first half of my career was all with adolescents, right? And so we ran these programs where we had the kids make drums, and then they learned how to play the drums, and then they did service to play drums for the community, and we would travel to play like drums for people. Well, we had this dude come in from Ghana as a wildcat, man, and he had so much energy, and he told us a story. You know, we're just talking about culture and the difference between cultures. And he told us this story how he was walking in Ghana. I forget what city it was, but he's walking and he sees this kid run across the street and he gets hit by a car. And the kid like flies. What does everyone do? Well, they pick the kid up and then everyone starts yelling at him and hitting him. Right? Like, what would we do? Like, that's like crazy to us, right? The driver of the car even got out and started yelling at the kid. Like, they checked on him first, kid's okay, then everyone started on the kid. Why? Like, you ain't gonna survive in this world if you're not even paying attention to cars, let alone everything else that is dangerous in Africa. That's a different mentality. I would think that there's less of a negative bias there, right? Like they're paying attention to real things that are dangerous. Guns, knives, fangs, right? We have a tendency to pay attention to a lot of things that are stressful, but our minds mislabel the stress into a threat. There's a big difference between stress and threat, okay? So that negative bias is there to help us with the threats. The definition to threat is real easy. Guns out, knives out, fangs out. Metal touching flesh, something coming at our face. Our biology is about to get negotiated. That's threat. How often does that happen in life? Not very often. Not here anyway. Okay, we are privileged, without a doubt. Okay? That's what negative bias is for. Is to negotiate that. Now, if it doesn't fall into that category, then it falls into the other side of bad, which is stress. Okay? That category is huge, but threat is not. And part of what we'll talk about as far as like, well, what do we do with the negative bias? Part of what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the importance of discerning between stress and threat, as well as neutral and good. Yeah, that is a funny thing about the mind, is it we'll turn something good into a threat. That's the opposite end of the spectrum. What's the example of that? Love. People get hurt and betrayed, which is one of the worst things a human being can go through. And they will say, no, I'm not, love's dangerous. That's when people get hurt. No, people get hurt when someone sticks a knife in your gut. That's a problem. Love is part of the human condition. Love is part of what we need to figure out. It does need to be negotiated. We do need to learn a lot of things, but it is not a threat. Okay? Big, big difference. But we'll turn good and neutral things into best stressful, but a lot of people turn it into threats. Right? Agoraphobia is a great example of this. People have so much anxiety, they don't want to go out of their house. Right? Like it feels real. I'm not saying it doesn't feel real. Okay? And we have to get to a point of saying, is it or isn't it a real threat situation? All right. Any thoughts or questions?
I've seen a huge shift in just the last 20 years of teaching. When I was teaching high school in 2003, which is 2023, the dynamic of the young adolescent humans have changed
Oh, yeah.
drastically enough to where now we don't have enough space to hold all of our kids that have anxiety and cannot be around.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many hypotheses that are happening. And 2020 didn't help, right? Like, the amount of neuroticism that happened after COVID was, I mean, like, do you remember when a sneeze didn't mean shit? Like, now, someone sneezes in a room, and what does everyone do? They orient towards it as if it's a bear. And that was a baby virus. That wasn't like airborne, Ebola, right? I'm not saying it didn't hurt a lot of people. I know that it did, okay? And it's still, germs are still not bears, right? But like, my kid sneezes in his elbow and apologizes now. Don't tell me that's not neuroticism, okay? So we're in a pickle, and it was happening before that happened, right? But we certainly are in a little more of a pickle now since 2020. Things have changed. There are scientists seeing that testosterone levels in boys have gone down by dozens of percentage points, right? I haven't looked into, the young women studies, but like things are changed, right?
I think I was reading a medical journal about some of the young women, about their stress levels.
Yeah, high.
And just in adolescence between like the ages of like 12 and 18, they're seeing such a significant increase in stress levels with that age, that it's affecting childbearing stuff. They're making assumptions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm always baffled.
It's wild.
Changes.
It's wild. And it's, we'll see what happens. And I think the word's confounded now, right? Because of all the vaccine stuff. So what's going to have an effect on childbirth and child rearing in the future? Right now, it's just more complicated for a lot of different reasons, right? So, one of the things that I want the people that I work with, one of the things that I want to preface the most is I want you to think like a passionate scientist, right? Like, I want you to be able to discern, and don't lose the romantic aspects of life, but don't fall for everything either, right? And that's one of the biggest reasons how we get to challenge these biases is we can see that jump of bear, and then we go like, oh, wait a second, is that really a bear, right? Or is that my feelings hijacking my prefrontal cortex, right? Did that person really say that, right? I don't like that person. Of course I heard something negative. They're negative. That's confirmation bias. We see what we want to see. Did they really say something that bad, or are they just talking about how they were pissed because they spilled their coffee? Was that really about me? That's what scientists do, is they think. Was that really the cause? And did the cause really affect the way that I think it did? Okay, that's how we challenge biases, whether it's biological to cognitive or psychological. Okay? So negative bias draws more attention and negative emotion. The more attention and the more emotion means that things are rehearsed more. Okay, so when something bad happens to us, when we have what in my thing is a trauma memory, right? And we pay more attention to bad things than good things. So what do people have a tendency to do in their own mind? And now that's what's wild about this negative bias. We've been talking about it as an environmental thing, environmental stimuli. What happens in here? The same damn thing. So when we have a trauma memory, there is a higher propensity to focus on that trauma memory. And when we focus on it, then we're rehearsing it. If we're rehearsing it, then we are reinforcing it. Okay? The more reinforcement it has, the more of a habit it becomes, right? When you think about a habit, do you think about it as a physical thing? Oh, that's a bad habit. Or an emotional thing? Right. What do you think most people classify it as?
They blame it on physical.
It's a physical. Habits are a physical thing. Thoughts are habits, emotions are habits, and then of course we have physical habits. Now, do we, in the full spectrum of humanity, have the ability to have every emotional experience a human being can have? Yeah. Me being the romantic that I am, I do believe that that is possible. Does it happen very often? No. People will just keep feeling and thinking the way they feel and think. That is commonly reinforced by their environment. And that's a bummer, because we miss out a lot on life. You know, we joke around at, Courtney, I don't know if you've heard this, but the whole reason why we set up Mind Spa is because we really want to run a bumper sticker company. And so, like, in our psychology and dark psychology efforts, we come up with a lot of one-liners. And one of the one-liners is, you didn't even like your childhood. Why are you replaying it? Right? That's what people do. They do it all the time. Right? And that's really the conundrum with trauma and PTSD, is that we have this propensity to lean towards the bad memories. Is it just the bad memory that's associated with that? No, we lean towards any stimuli that is even remotely, let alone contingently related to that trauma memory. That's the hijacking of life. Like, remember the bear story, right? Like, hair stands up in the bottom of the back of our head and we start remembering the bird and the squirrel. Like, it's really clear how we do that with the bear story. But like, we do this with how our parents raised us, right? And then we get in an unfortunate situation where we pick a partner that in some way is similar to the familiarity of our childhood, right? And then we start that whole confirmation thing and it starts getting reinforced.
Is that because it's comfortable though?
Familiar.
Take back to it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's partially, I think, it's a hugely familiarity, right? Like, there's 4 ingredients to trauma. Death, that's like, nervous systems don't like that. Randomness, isolation, and restraint or helplessness, right? So randomness is the whole familiarity issue, right? We would rather stay in a bad position that is known than venture off into unknown territory that might be really good, but it's unknown, right? And that's one of the reasons why people stay in abusive relationships. I'd rather take the hit from the person that I know how hard they hit, and I know what that feels like. Come here. Come on. Death, randomness, isolation, and helplessness or restraint. So I'd rather take the hit from the person I'm taking a hit from, because I know how hard it is and I know when it comes, than leave. And I might not get hit, but if I do get hit, I don't know what that hit's going to feel like. Right? And that's real, guys. That's like a real pain and suffering and quagmire for a mind and brain to be in. Right? And people say all the time, well, they get an abusive relationship. Why don't they just leave? I just want to slap myself. If it was that easy, people would do it. It's not easy. It's really hard and it's really scary to leave even bad things. Okay? That doesn't mean we don't push against it and challenge it. It just means it's hard and we should have compassion with it. Okay? So, we have this negative bias that's biologically motivated. We have maybe a childhood that's rough, and we have some bad things that happen throughout life. Trauma, right? It reinforces the childhood experience. Maybe we don't have bad childhood experiences, we just have hard traumas and a natural negative bias. So that negative bias gets magnified. And then you fall in love. And now there's a whole set of everything that I just said with the other person, that they've got their thing going on. They have their negative bias. They have their traumas, right? They have their attachment style. And now we got two huge, complex, and sophisticated factors with people that are not bad. They just have high negative biases and a lot of control mechanisms, defense mechanisms, and their hearts are in the right place, but the relationship starts getting hard. Okay? When the relationship starts getting hard, then what's the narrative that's built? Right? Like, I thought I was marrying someone different. I thought this was going to be different. This is starting to feel a lot like my past. Why does this shit follow me everywhere? Okay, confirmation bias. Things get reinforced. Okay? And that's, what can we say about that? Yes, it's just such a big factor in the human condition, right? And it's really hard. And we have to learn how to challenge it. Like, just because we have a narrative, just because we have a story, it does not mean it's true. Just because we get hurt, just because someone even breaks our heart, it doesn't mean it's directly connected to the trauma we experience or the childhood that we had. Right? So I try and coach people with this idea. It's like, be careful seeing what you want to see. Be careful with over-familiarizing, or we'll say over-personalizing. Right? I think that's more succinct. People are just bumping into each other. It's not so personal. Does it hurt? Yeah, pain is very personal. When someone hurts our feelings, that feels real personal too. But it's a very small group of people that are doing that on purpose. And what are those people called? Psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists. It's a small group. Otherwise, people are just bumping into us and we're just saying, ouch. And it makes us, it reminds us, and it feels familiar to what used to be. Right? Any thoughts on that?
This is stressing me out.
Do you dare say more? Tell me more.
I just feel like there's so many factors involved in attempting to correct and, like you said, challenge these things. The first thing that comes to my mind is how? What?
Yeah, good. Let's move into that. But I also want to set up the dread. We better be aware of what we're up against. Because when our negative bias is high and our trauma memories are solidified, then that keeps us from seeing good things, right? And literally keeps us from making new memories, right? Because will we approach if we have a high negative bias? No. We'll protect ourselves, right? So, generically, what are we interested in? Well, we're either moving away or moving towards, right? What should we move away from? What's the list? Short list. Threat, guns, knives, fangs. Just keep it simple. We should move away from that. If our partner says, I'm in a bad mood, I need some space, move away from that. That's fine, okay? But otherwise, we should be approaching. We should approach stress, okay? So we do want to understand that this negative bias, like I said in the beginning, right? High correlation with PTSD, depression, anxiety. There's a bunch of neuro stuff that's fascinating, like the parts of the brain that are affected with people that have depression is incredibly correlated with negative imagery, right? So when people are hopeless, it's almost common sense, right? When people are depressed, what are they going to see? More depressing shit, right? But it's actually neurobiologically related, right? And that's a big thing, okay? Can neurology be changed? Yep. right? It's just harder to change, right? We know that people that meditate, at least 10 minutes a day, I hope for 12. The tradition says 20. If you don't have time to meditate 20 minutes a day, then you should meditate for 40 minutes a day. But 10 minutes a day shows changes in the brain, in brain imaging, in the prefrontal cortex, which is part of what gets shut down in negative bias, because we're going right to the emotional center, right? Okay. Any thoughts or questions?
There's a difference between guided, meditation and just doing it on your own?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beneficial?
I push everyone towards formal traditional meditation, right? So mindfulness of breath, and there's lots of good stuff online now. I mean, that's the best thing that came from COVID is there's so much cool stuff online. You can take full courses and you don't have to go to the ashram, right? It's cool. So take a formal meditation course and understand how to watch your breath without any other thought. Right? And if you want the short version, I'd be happy to talk about that. Why I like the formal meditation is because, even if I'm meditating on this marker, it's easier to meditate on an object outside of myself or a visualization or even a word or a mantra than it is to quietly sit there and only have one task, which is to count my exhales. That is very difficult to do. Okay? And so all this other stimuli like visualizations, it just doesn't allow for the raw discipline, for the prefrontal cortex to identify that it's not focused, finish the thought, and then pull it back to focus without any stimuli other than the internal choice. And I think that's where we really see huge changes in the prefrontal cortex. Okay. So, what do we do? Let's use purple. It's not red. All right, so we already talked about some of this, but I was talking to a patient today, and it's what is the ingredients to change, right? And he was wrestling with it, and it seems to be, and I'm not a huge fan of reducing things to its smallest parts. But I do think it is worthwhile to get some main, simple, key ingredients, just so we can keep it in mind. It's really hard to pay attention to a whole theory if you want to change. But paying attention to 2 words, mindfulness and discipline, or even 1 word, choice, that's what makes change possible, is in order to challenge negative bias. Good girl, good girl. In order to challenge negative bias, we have to make a choice. We have to pay attention, mindfully be aware of what's happening, and then make a different choice to challenge it, and then have the discipline to follow that choice. Okay. So what do we start doing? Well, we already separated out bad, right? Stress and threat. Threat has a very small things, knives, guns, a very small subject matter. Stress is really, really big. Okay, there's lots of stresses. Let me name one that people get, couples get in fights over this stress. What do you want to eat tonight? Does that sound like a stress? Yeah, you too. Have you guys ever gotten in an argument about what you want to eat tonight? Come on, be brave. All the time, one couple says, right? Occasionally. What outfit should I wear? This or that? Bah, right? It's wild what gets lumped in this stress category. Most of the world doesn't even eat once every 2 days. And we're worried about spaghetti and hamburgers? Right? Food is here. Not even here, but here. Here for us, it is. Now, we could say in most of the world, well, we could put guns, knives, fangs, and food. Yeah, because that's how most of the world lives. Right? Lots of the world doesn't even have one pair of shoes. Right? Most of the world that do have shoes only have one pair. I've got like 10. And all of those are boots. That's not even counting my shoes. Okay? So we have this tendency for us to make things that are neutral or good into stressors. And that's like the number one thing. And what do you want to call that? Gratitude, being mindfully aware, counting your blessings, like whatever. But we got to start categorizing correctly. Excuse me, come here. Come on. Almost done. Good girl, good girl. So what this is called is appraisal skills. Right? We have to start putting the right value to the right stimuli. It's just, I kind of got this from the Buddhist Eightfold Path, and that's really beautiful and sophisticated and somewhat complicated, but it's really reduced to this. Good is good, neutral is neutral, bad is bad, bad is stress and threat. We have to be mindfully aware in the present moment to start seeing things as they really are. Okay? And some of this is really hard. Okay? Right now, there is some baby antelope getting eaten by hyenas. Good, neutral, or bad? Right. Yeah. It kind of depends. If you're the antelope, sucks, but you don't have a mind, so it's just life. Right? But we see that. We attribute that as bad. Right? When it's the animal kingdom. Right? It has to go that way. Right? And that's, how about this one? There's a surfer, they're surfing, and they get their arm bit off by a shark. What's that? Well, it's certainly this for a second, but is the shark bad? The context is this. What's the shark? It's somewhere over here. It's just a thing, just like that tree is. It's just doing what they do. Now, it's bad for the person, right? But that shark is not bad, right? So this is a critical thinking. We have to start seeing things. We have to start training ourselves. It's wild to me how bad, as we talked about, physiological responses, heart rates increase, temperature changes, right? Digestive enzymes change. People will see something bad and sometimes they want to puke. That's big. Have you ever looked at a sunset and had the exact opposite reply, where you start tearing with joy? People have had that, but it's not very often. People will be like, cool sunset, and I want spaghetti, right? Now they're back to arguing about the thing, right? If we want to challenge this negative bias, we have to get really mindful about what we are seeing and what we are getting exposed to, okay? When we're driving and that person is looking at their phone and they cut us off or get too close to us from behind, stress or threat? Stress. Even if it's an oh shit moment, it's really close. It's well, maybe for a moment that was a threat. But the moment that there's no contact, means you're okay. It's still stressful. But I would say it's good because there's no contact. Right? But our mind hijacks us all the time with stress. Okay, literally, this is our brainstem, this is our limbic system, and this is the prefrontal cortex, and then this is the cortical region, which is where all the humanness is. It's in the wrinkly part of our brain. When we start feeling stress and emotion starts crawling up, blood flows from here into the limbic system. Okay? We know this. we've all been in arguments where we say something and we don't, and our partner will be like, you remember saying that? And we'll be like, no, not really, right? It's like literally memory shuts down. Never, right? Right? Literally, as emotion increases, our memory systems and reasoning goes down. And that's why this is like, mindfulness is so important, because we got to be able to like bring that down. Like, there's no contact. I am not in threat. This is a bummer. But like, the world isn't ending today. All right. You want to say something? No? Okay. So, this one and this one, actually, they come pretty naturally. I do think we're exposed to a lot of good. We don't pay attention to it. But when we are exposed to good, it is somewhat of a biological process because dopamine is released. Dopamine is like one scientist, Andrew Huberman, said dopamine is the currency of the brain. Right? So dopamine is when we anticipate something and we're excited, task completion, and then when we just see something good and it's just like, oh, that's nice. Now, what's interesting about task completion, can task completion, even though it's a natural dopaminergic process, turn into something stressful all the freaking time, right? And that's, we start getting into higher levels of neurosis when that's happening. But these are basically naturally occurring. How about this one? I know people that can't sit down quietly without moving or looking at their phone or watching TV. Like neutral is bothersome. That worries me. Okay? When this dog is tired, it doesn't matter where she is. She's just laying down and going to sleep. It's like good. Right? Good. That was good training. Look at you getting all advanced and sophisticated. Good girl. We don't do that. We gotta keep moving, and we sit down, looking over here. Where's our phone? What's new? Right? No. Even if you don't formally meditate, learn how to sit still and enjoy it. Sink into the wellness. Right? It's not ecstasy. It's not fun. It's not supposed to be. Okay? But your mind, and this is part of the things that have been changing, right? Like what's changed in the last 20 years? These freaking things have changed in the last 20 years. It's not like we're sitting on our phone watching mandalas spin and like breathing, right? Like it's image, image, image. I looked up one thing and like 5 advertisements showed up. 3 of which I was talking about earlier in the day, which totally freaks me out because I'm not even typing it. It's just listening and popping shit up. I hate it. It breeds this attention deficit problem. Stop it. Put it down. Put the book down. Don't do anything, but just sit there for 10 to 20 minutes a day. Please. Okay? And then feel the wellness. Feel the okayness. Feel the blessing that where we live, we can be neutral and not have to be on guard. Because that ain't happening in a lot of the world. Being neutral is absolutely a privilege. And it allows our nervous system this time to just recalibrate, right? Slow everything down. It sets up the proper discernment and contrast and comparison with the other fields, okay? And we really suck at it, right? So, sure, meditation is great. Sitting quietly, don't underestimate it. Look at a tree and just watch it grow, right? Don't try and slow your thoughts down. You don't have to meditate. But if you know meditation, certainly start the meditation off by just sitting quietly for 5 minutes. Slow everything down. Concentrate on your exhales, right? Slow exhales. And then start your meditation practice, right? And then what do you do when you're done? If you can imagine me when you get up and you pick up the phone, just imagine me slapping that phone out of your hand. That's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do to get this cooking is just acknowledge the happiness that you have, because out of all the people in the world, you were able to sit still and quiet without any threat or stress for just 10 minutes and let yourself feel good about that task being complete. Okay? And then go get more work done. Go get other things done. Right? But come back to this neutrality as much as possible. Okay? Any thoughts on that rant?
I have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to a podcast a while back, and the more that I think about the appraisal skills and kind of like the dopamine and like thinking how like our receptors are in our brains, and it's like your dopamine is here, and then your pain scale is here, and they're basically working in the same system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that balance, and so like finding that neutrality is like, yes, I know things are bad, but also
Yeah.
like that kind of scale.
Yeah.
So thinking about those types of things and like talking about like your environments or kind of like behaviors, like meditation does seem like a really good way to kind of balance it out.
It really is.
Other things,
Well, and meditation is different than mindfulness.
right? And to
Yeah.
notice like those types of
Mm-hmm.
bringing your thoughts or bringing that different perspective, like how to look for that.
Right. So there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what the physical body experiences, and that's it. If I kick you in the knee right now, who I am and who you are does not matter. Your knee's going to hurt. It's an electrical impulse, and that's it. That's pain. Suffering is the story the mind creates about the pain. Now that changes lives. Okay? Suffering makes a lot of this into this. It's that narrative thing that I was talking about before. Okay? Where once that narrative is set, once that story of my life is problematic for this or that reason, then that negative bias is going to kick up. It's going to be more magnified, right? And we're going to see less of this and this. Okay? Mindfulness, just being aware, right?
So if you're thinking about negative bias and you think about neurobiology, the negative bias is going to be more hardwired in your brain.
Absolutely is.
Neurobiologically.
Yeah.
And then that influences your appraisal skills.
Exactly.
How do you break that cycle?
Mindfulness, choice, and discipline. Like, you got to think this is important enough to do something about it, right?
And what happens when other people don't have that comprehension, that vision, that desire?
That is the hardship of humanity. You know,
Awareness, huh? Not having the awareness to even do anything about it.
or not even, I mean, not even the awareness, but even before awareness, like they just don't care. They're not here sitting in this room. They're not reading. They're not listening to the podcasts. And so we get surrounded by some of these people at workplace. The love of our lives may not be as aware. And it's like, that's part of life. And so what do you do with that? It's like, well, you get really good at differentiation. And you got to love that person for who they are and what they are and their foibles. And then you got to learn communication skills to encourage the same thing back to you. And so that we, as a partnership, can get good at differentiation and loving each other for who we are rather than who we want them to be. And that is just a lot of hard work. Right? So, yeah, it's hard. But there's small things, right? Like, I just heard recent studies, like people that say hi to strangers live longer. Like, I think that's a pretty easy thing. That's pretty mellow. No conversation needed. Just, hey, how are you? A little smile. All right?
I do that all the time, but then I get mad if they don't answer.
Yeah, well, man, like it was like this to that real fast, right? That's what the mind does. You know, the mind, you've heard me say this before, brilliant, beautiful, treacherous, silly, and stupid. That's our mind. And it can experience all 5 of those domains in like 2 seconds. Right? So it's fickle. So what do we do with fickle minds? We discipline it. There's no easy way around that. It's just a lot of work, right? Even if we have, even if we're on medication helps take the edge off. It's still hard work. Even if we have intervention, it's still hard work. Even if you're depressed and you take 3 to 5 grams of mushrooms, it's still going to be hard work. It changes perspective, but it doesn't change the entire story. That's up to you. And if anyone could take that away from you, then you'd be a spoiled brat because you wouldn't have to learn and muscle through all the hard lessons. You wouldn't grow.
So, you say it's really hard, and then it becomes like the elephant out there,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so how do you break it up into little steps?
Yeah.
Or you have successes,
Yeah.
because now it's this huge thing out there that you
I
don't
know
know
it.
how to approach.
I know it. Yeah, and so we got to kind of find the steps. It's like, well, this is what I'm used to doing, right? This is, 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, and this is what I'm doing. And so what's the ingredient? What's the thing to do? Do something different, right? And so you're just going to pick 3 things. If usually I don't go out, I'm going to go out every day, and I'm going to go out for 5 minutes. I'm going to go out for 10 minutes. I'm going to go out for an hour. I'm just going to go on a walk. Everyone should be walking 20 to 40 minutes, 7 days a week. So we're going to do something that is different than what we usually do, right? And we keep trying, and it's hard, and it's beautiful. It's worth it. Okay? Yeah. So we could say dopamine is good. Neutral, I talked to one neuroscientist, he didn't really like this, but it's basically true that serotonin has to do with wellness. It gives us that sense of well-being, right? And then how many stress chemicals do we have in our body?
Too many.
A freaking lot. Like dozens and dozens of stress chemicals. I think that's so interesting, right? It's like that backs up this whole biological mandate of how important managing and paying attention to stress and threat is. Okay, so other things that we could do is, finish the thought. If you're thinking about something, you had enough wherewithal to say, this isn't a threat, this is a stress, and damn that person, blah, 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 spaghetti, I wanted, a hamburger. Like, finish the thought, right? Like, okay, who is that person? And what were they really saying when they said that? And was it really personal? Like, were they really trying to piss me off, or were they just running their story? Okay. Was it really that bad? Right? Like, am I getting shot at right now? That's what my medical doctor, I got in these 2 accidents. One was on a bicycle, one was on a motorcycle. I got hit from behind twice in 1 year. I had 6 surgeries in 18 months. And I come in somewhere like after my 4th surgery, and I come into my family practitioner doctor, and he's like, how you doing? And I'm like, bad. Like, I don't feel good. Clinically depressed, like not good. And he's like, well, anyone try and shoot you today? And I was like, yeah, you dick. Like, no one tried to shoot me. And it's like, okay, I never forgot that. I was so mad at him, but I've never forgotten it because it's been a reference point ever since. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean other bad stuff didn't happen, but it is important and based in reality that we could discern that it's not happening, right? That's one of the key elements for trauma processing, is being able to orient in time that it happened, it's not happening. When that guy cuts us off and we have a huge pucker clutch and we're profanity and it's done. It happened. It's not happening. There's no contact. I hope everything is all right with him and his family. Right? I don't have to hang on to that. Who knows what's going on with that person? Okay? Finish the thought. When someone cuts me off or does something, come here, baby. Come here. When someone does something like that, I start thinking about, well, he doesn't look like he's in that big of a rush, and he doesn't look like he's like crying, so maybe he's just an asshole. And then I'm like, man, like I wonder how many other people he's going to be a jerk to today. Oh, okay, at least I'm not him. Like, finish the thought. Find a way to depersonalize it and move it from stress to neutral, because that's all that is if there's no contact. Okay. Now, sit. Come on. We're almost done. Come on. Sit. Down. All right, almost done. Now, I'm very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about trauma. Okay. I want to frame this as evolution or creation. I kind of see them as not opposing, but like you figured that out. I got it figured out in my mind. But it brought us this far. Okay? Like, what do I see as the next evolutionary step? This. That we can use appraisal skills, and actually we have a choice for the first time in the history of the world to evolve in a direction which has never happened before. But what if we can flatten negative bias? Or what if we can grow in such cognitive skills, such stability, such awareness, that instead of neuroticism going through the roof like it is now, we can have discernment to the point where we could immediately recover from trauma as long as we're alive. Then it's okay. It happened. It's not happening. Okay? So that's a little esoteric, but I think it gets the point across of my passion. Okay? Like, this challenges the negative bias. This comes naturally. This kind of comes naturally. But we got to bring a lot of mindfulness to see things how they really are, because it's not how we perceive them, not as much as we think. All right? So, any closing thoughts or questions?
Do you think it would help to have a reset, like we did? I watched this podcast a while ago, and it said to go out on adventures and challenge yourself.
Yeah.
The extreme cold conditions, whatever, your tent now, you're making a fire,
Yeah.
Food, you don't have all the food you need, you have to hunt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get a reset on all this, so we have something to worry about, and then we come back to civilization, and,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna think about everything totally different, putting yourself in conditions like that, like you're saying, in all these other countries.
Yeah.
Would that help as a reset?
I think there's two different types of reset that you were talking about there. So one is the nervous system resets, which is what cold plunges and, heat therapies, saunas, fasting, I think all that stuff, I mean, there's scientific evidence that yes, it absolutely helps. I don't think that's going to necessarily have a direct biological effect on our psychology, though. Like, I know a lot of people that do cold plunges, and they are living here, right? They get out of their cold plunge like, oh, I'm fucking awesome, and I'm gonna go to work, and blah! And everyone's like, I hate that guy, right? And it's like, if we want it to work psychologically, then we have to be mindful to it, right? And understand, I am resetting my nervous system right now, so I do not have to act like a schmuck later, that I am okay, right? And things are inherently good for my station in this world. And I have thoughts about all the people that are hungry right now, right? I'm making today for them. Now that will change psychology. That's a different thing, right? Traveling is so important. Being in the woods is so important. I want everyone to do that. I think everyone should be hungry a lot more than they are, right? I think it's good physiologically. I think it's good psychologically. And we can just read Steve Jobs' closing thoughts. He nailed it there at the very, very end. It doesn't matter whether you have a $30 watch or a $3,000 watch. It's the same damn time. And it's all over for us in a second compared to how old the universe is. Really lean into that. We live 50 more years, and that's still a second compared to how old the universe is, right? So This is really important. Really, really important. It's also biological, so you don't have to really worry about it. Like, if there's an oh shit moment right in front of you, your biology is already set up to optimize survival potential. Right? But the complexity is the mind, is that we kind of get stuck there. And then we have to fight like heck to get out of that. Right? I was talking to, I do a lot of work with veterans, and I was talking to a group, and we were talking about hypervigilance. So after PTSD, after traumatic stress, there's this tendency to stay on guard, and it's this kind of constant stress threat evaluation process that happens. And it's not just with vets, it's civilians. Statistically, there's more civilians with hypervigilance than vets with hypervigilance, right? Because fewer population in the military services. Anyway, I was like, yeah, you can keep looking around, you can keep doing all that stuff, but you do realize that your entire nervous system is wired to be ready for threat. Like, you don't have to think about it. You're already ready. And one guy in the group literally sat down and he just started tearing. He's like, it changes everything for me. Right? And it's just like, he's like, I'm already ready. I don't have to be ready. And it's just like, yeah. And bonus, you're trained as a high class warrior. Not only are you already ready, but if you do have to do something, you already got all the skills to take care of business. And it's like, man, when you really take that in, like, it changes a lot in a person who's experienced trauma in life. Right? Now for the kids, I think we need to go old school, take the phones away. Remember the dial-up phones? My kids saw one in a pawn shop the other day. He was like, Dad, look at it, it's so awesome. I still remember my phone number from like the 70s, right? It's just the way we're going. It will play out. Life has a life of its own. Right? What we can do is do things like this, and we can teach this to other people, right, to bring more of the balance to the surface. All right? What other thoughts? All right, guys. I hope this was useful. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, I appreciate you letting me talk about it. It's really important to me in my life. So, thanks. All right. All right. Thank you.